Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Mediocre Mahler, a mild-mannered survey in which we use no hyperbole. We're gentle and nice, and we don't jump up and down and scream and carry on. I know you all love it when I jump up and down and scream and carry on, but there's some moments when it's just not appropriate. And in Mediocre Mahler, this is one of those moments. But this is a particularly interesting talk because it raises some serious aesthetic and philosophical issues. We're talking about Symphony number 5. Now, the Fifth Symphony is by far the most difficult of all the Mahler symphonies to pull off. And it's really kind of fascinating. It gave Mahler himself a lot of problems in terms of finding the right sound for this particular work. He rescored it completely on revision and made just tons and tons of changes because at this point his style was starting to become extremely contrapuntal. So clarity of line was critical factor in the way that he thought of the work and in making the musical message clear. It also is his first non-vocal symphony since the first, and so it's absolute, and its form is extremely innovative and unusual because it has a kind of Bartokian arch form, if you want to call it that, meaning there are 5 movements, a huge central scherzo. It's the longest scherzo anybody ever wrote in a major symphony, I think, probably, or one of them. Oh, it's one of them. It's the longest that's in a symphony that gets played regularly. That I can safely say. It runs about between 16 to 18 minutes, and Mahler didn't want it played too quickly. And then the outer movements are pairs, related pairs. There's a funeral march, the slow introduction leading to the fast allegro, which quotes from the funeral march. It uses a lot of the same thematic material, and the 2 movements are linked. And then there's the adagietto on the other side of the scherzo, the slow movement, introduction, leading to the quick rondo finale, and the movements are thematically linked. And then the first part is related to the last part. I mean, it's really marvelously put together. It's so much fun to listen to it as you get to know it, to hear all the interrelated workings of this just tremendously brilliant symphonic exercise. It's not one of the longest in terms of time of Mahler symphonies. It plays for around 70 minutes normally, 65, 70 minutes, I think. But it is the longest Mahler symphony in terms of bar length. It has like 1,100 and something, I don't know, thousands of bars. And the reason is because of that big scherzo in the middle, which of course is in 3/10, a rather quick 3. I mean, Mahler didn't want to play too quickly, but it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And when you do that for 18 minutes, you get a lot of bars. There's a lot of bars at that 18 minutes of triple time. And so it's harder than it sounds. Let's put it that way. It's also extremely difficult for the strings. The strings are written in a very linear way with a lot of counterpoint, as I mentioned before. It's not a big woodwind symphony as far as Mahler goes. The woodwind complement, of course, is large, but not crazy large, but it has a lot of brass. It's full of brass things. And so it's interesting in terms of its sound, its sonority and timbre. And for some reason, and I'm not sure what that reason is, most conductors have a lot of problems trying to make this symphony tick, which it really does. I mean, if you just sort of leave it alone and play what Mahler wrote, it works quite well. And there have been a huge number, as a result, of mediocre performances. Not good, not bad, just blah, just mediocre. And so we need to talk about them, and we need to talk about them in an incredibly balanced and fair and affable, equitable way. My choice for the mediocre Mahler Fifth, and this brings a whole other issue in play, is Markus Stenz on the Oehms label with the Gürzenich Orchestra of Cologne Gürzenich Orchestra. Now, this is a fascinating case because Markus Stenz, fascinating, of course, is a bit of hyperbole. No, it's not. It's just a fact. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Markus Stenz released an extraordinary performance of Mahler's Fifth with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, I believe. It was on like ABC Classics or some tiny label. It cost virtually nothing, and it was really a remarkably fine performance. One of the reference recordings, a great Mahler Fifth, where the orchestra was galvanized to give its very best, and Stenz had a splendid interpretation in mind, and it was excellent. And because of that, he also recorded a Mahler 2, I believe, which was less interesting. He got the position at this orchestra and promptly recorded an entire Mahler cycle. Now, let's be very, very honest and fair and equitable. He was not ready to do a complete Mahler cycle. I mean, so many conductors just become specialists at an early age, and then they go and they rip into a whole swath of repertoire for which they're completely unprepared. Stenz is a fine conductor. He's talented. Everybody these days knows what they're doing. The orchestra is a very good orchestra. But the question is, were they up for a complete Mahler cycle recorded over a very, very short span of time? And the answer is no, they were not. But what makes it most interesting, these performances are just mediocre. This is the mediocre Mahler cycle par excellence. It's just bland. Nothing is really, really great. Nothing is really, really bad. It's just there. It sits there. It's sort of like, a lump of something somewhere in the middle of something. So the fascinating thing about this, though, was that Mahler Fifth was really, really wonderful. And so the question is, what was going to happen when he remade Mahler 5? First of all, there was no need for him to remake Mahler 5, because when you do something that's really wonderful, don't tempt fate. Just don't. Don't go there, because you're just asking for trouble. And trouble is what happened. It's not that it's a bad Mahler 5, the remake. It's just nowhere near as fine as the great Mahler 5. It's mediocre. It's absolutely mediocre. The qualities that made that earlier Mahler 5 so special, the excitement and the color and all of those things are just missing. They're just not there, which leads us to question Mr. Stenz's real ability as a conductor, because what was he listening to? What didn't he hear the second time around? Were those wonderful qualities in the first performance an accident? Just a happy stroke of fate? Or was there some intention behind it all? Because, I've played in many orchestras now, and I've spent my life listening to them and these things, and I begin to realize when conductors remake recordings, it's a fascinating thing, because then you really learn what they as conductors had control over and what they didn't seem to care about. And it's shocking what they don't seem to care about and what they tolerate. And in this Mahler cycle, and particularly with respect to the Fifth Symphony, it's not a terrible performance, but it's relatively speaking lacking in color, lacking in drive, lacking in power and excitement. All the things that made that previous recording just so special are absent here. And so I think this is a particularly cogent and telling example of how mediocrity is everybody's sort of what's the word? Their go-to level of performance. It's their average. They're just okay. They're mediocre. They're not special. And when they are special, is it an accident? That's the question, isn't it? So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.